So I unknowingly entered this side quest where I'm testing out some Android products. I want to see how they compare to Apple hardware, Apple software, and of course, most importantly, that beloved Apple ecosystem. It all started with the OnePlus Pad 3 that I tested out and compared to the iPad Pro a couple weeks ago, and you guys seem to love that honest take. So when Samsung asked if I wanted to check out the brand new Fold 7, I of course wanted to see what all the hype was about, especially with this folding form factor that Apple just hasn't entered yet for some reason. So let's talk about the Fold 7 and everything that it brings. But now before we continue, if you do enjoy videos like this one, definitely consider subscribing to the channel because it helps motivate us to make more comparison videos like this and test out to see what else is out there. But now let's get on with it. So this by no means is a full-on review, this is more so of a first impressions from the perspective of somebody who's been in the Apple ecosystem for basically 20 years now at this point, and I've been using every single iPhone since the original iPhone back in 2007. So again, I've always wanted to see what this folding phone and form factor would really be like. Is it all hype? Is it kind of gimmicky? Is it really useful? Can it replace maybe the tablet kind of middle ground? I've always been curious to see what all the hype was about when it comes to this beautiful folding form factor because in theory, it looks great, right? Having a slab on the front that's basically the same size as a regular candy bar phone, but then you open it up and it's the size of an iPad mini to give you kind of a little bit more from a productivity standpoint and also from a content consumption standpoint. So again, I was lucky enough to get about 3 hours of hands-on time with the Fold 7 as well as some other products, but I did want to focus on the Fold 7 because I was wowed by the hardware, and that's the one that if I were to go to any type of foldable form factor, it would definitely be the fold form factor and not really that flip form factor. And now we're really going to focus on the hardware here. There are some software things that I want to touch on, but again, the hardware was the thing that really jumps out at you with this brand new Fold 7 because this thing is an engineering marvel. It is only 8.9 millimeters thick when it's closed shut. I believe the iPhone 16 Pro Max is 8.25 millimeters, and I had them laying down side by side. I held them together at the same time, and when you're holding them in the hand, they feel pretty much the same. Yes, the camera protrusion is probably a little bit bigger on the Fold 7, but overall, when you're holding it in your hand, the Fold 7 now feels like a normal phone, right? It folds completely flat, so there is no gap that you're kind of feeling at all times. The ridge to open it up is way more flattened, so it feels like a normal side of a normal phone. And again, when I hold it side by side to my iPhone 16 Pro Max, it is unbelievable what they've been able to fit in a folding smartphone in 2025. So I'm going to continue to contextualize the size and the form factor and the hardware to the iPhone 16 Pro Max because that's all we really know on the Apple side. There is no foldable to compare it to when it comes to Samsung on the iPhone side and on the Apple side. But again, just to give you an idea of how this feels in the hand, the iPhone 16 Pro Max is 227 grams in weight, and the new Fold 7, which is, again, a folding phone that has a screen on the front, an inner screen, the rear cameras, the inside camera, the front camera, it is 215 grams. So it is lighter than your iPhone 16 Pro Max, and it does feel a tiny bit lighter in the hand. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, the thickness is almost the same at this point, which is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, when you look at the bottom of it and you look at the USB-C port, it physically cannot get any thinner, in my opinion. Then you would have to kind of remove the USB-C port or go with something else or have an open chase USB-C port, which I've seen in some other kind of drops and things like that. But overall, basically, it is the thickness of a USB-C port when it is fully open. Now, of course, this is Samsung's flagship, so it's made out of the best quality materials. You're talking about grade 4 titanium framing, some Corning Gorilla Glass Victus 2, and ceramic glass on the back to make it feel as premium, but also make sure that it's as protected as possible and as rigid as possible if you do go caseless. But when you open it up, now it halves itself in size in terms of thinness, and now this thing is 4 millimeters thin, or I believe 4.4 millimeters thin, which is absolutely absurd. Again, if you compare it to the thinnest thing that Apple makes right now, which is going to be the M4 iPad Pro, that's 5.1 millimeters in thickness, meaning that the iPad Pro is thicker than the thinnest point on this new Fold 7. So again, just to contextualize what this all looks like and how it felt in the hand. When I opened this thing up, it was insane. It literally felt like a piece of paper that I was holding, or a thick piece of construction paper, because that's how thin it was when it was fully opened. And now before we get into the internal display, let's talk about the external one, which is a 6.5-inch OLED 120Hz display. Again, on the 16 Pro Max side, you're dealing with a 6.9-inch display. So the iPhone screen size is bigger than the front screen, but again, we are dealing with the same kind of high-end display, kind of the ProMotion rival with 120Hz. And I don't know if it was maybe the software or the UI, but I would say that the Fold 7 was a little bit snappier when scrolling through websites, especially when you were really flicking it and you wanted to go fast. It was moving faster than the iPhone 16 Pro Max, and it was very smooth. And then when you open it up, you are now dealing with an 8-inch display diagonally, compared to last year's, which I believe was 7.6 inches diagonally. So you're getting a little bit more screen real estate overall. It is a little bit wider, so you can view content a little bit better, because one of the arguments of these phones is that when you do open it up, it's more so of a square size or 4:3 aspect ratio, so you don't really get that much more screen real estate when you are viewing content. This is still kind of the same, like you still have the black bars when you're viewing content, but it does extend it a little bit more, making it bigger than the 6.9-inch display you have on your iPhone when you do hold it horizontally. And then with this display, one of the things I was worried about is glare, and we were in a very, very well lit environment. They put lights everywhere to make sure that we had all the light we needed in order to get this good content capture and the hands-on. And the brightness of this phone was absolutely insane. It peaks at 2600 nits of brightness on both the inside and the outer display, and both of them are OLED displays, and both of them have 120 Hz ProMotion. So it's pretty much, again, the latest and greatest you can get in a flagship device, and it better be for a $2,000 starting price. And then of course you gotta talk about the cameras, because it does have a nice little camera protrusion that matches very nicely with the S25 Ultra that we reviewed earlier this year. And you are dealing with a new 200 megapixel main sensor on the rear, that's gonna be the wide one. And then you do have your ultra wide camera as well as a selfie camera and an under display camera on the inside as well, if you do want to use that for selfies or anything like that. But one of the cool party tricks that it has is that you can use that main 200 megapixel camera in order to create selfies, because you can use the front of it as a viewfinder since it is a device that can open up completely. And I did see a sample of a true 200 megapixel camera. The file size is about 35 megapixels in size for one picture, the one that they were showing me. I believe that is binned down, but again, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But it is nice that you're able to crop into your images even after you take it from far away, and after you crop in, you still get a crispy image because again, you have 200 megapixels to play with overall. So again, the hardware I was absolutely in love with, I was wowed by it. It was super thin, but also rigid, and the form factor felt tough in the hand. And I like the new hinge because of the fact that A, it limits the crease in the middle. Like the crease is definitely there. Of course, this is a folding phone, but the crease is not as visible as I thought it would be when I've seen other videos in the past of some of those older folds that I've seen where the crease is very prominent. This one isn't as prominent because of this new folding technology that they're adding, where it doesn't fully crease it up. It's almost kind of a teardrop fold, similar to what people have described with the Razer phones to limit that crease look. And then of course the hinge, it's pretty much, you can put it at any angle that you want for the most part, creating almost like this mini laptop mode. And there's a bunch of other cool different modes where you can fully take advantage of that hinge when it is sitting up. So there is this kind of tablet mode, there's this laptop mode, you can put it down and kind of use it as a tripod in its own tripod mode as well. And then of course, like I mentioned, it has a bunch of cool little camera tricks, which are awesome to take advantage of. And then the question I wanted to ask myself here was, yes, the folding form factor is very cool in theory. You know, you have two displays, it's now thin enough where it isn't that annoying to hold around, it's not too heavy, it's actually lighter than the iPhones that we have in our pockets. But is a fold something that you do want to take advantage of, or would you rather just have an ultra slim candy bar phone, right? That's the question that I wanted to ask myself, and I think I would need to have an extended period of time, but I see the appeal of being a quote-unquote power user on your phone, right? Being able to have two apps side by side with an article and maybe some notes, or maybe you're doing something on one side, or you're copying and pasting stuff over. And they added some cool little software tricks, especially in the photos where you are editing a photo side by side. You can always keep the original up on one side versus having the new edited version on the other side. So I see some cool use cases as to what it would be like to have a folding phone with a big inner display. So I could see myself multitasking a little bit here and there, but I'm curious to know how much I would actually do that and how often I would open up this fold, and if I would just treat it like a normal candy bar phone at the end of the day, because the front display is still a fantastic display. So I would definitely need to get my hands on it to get an extended use and review it over time to see if that folding form factor is something that I could use long term, and if I see a net positive value to be able to spend something like $2,000 for one single phone. But like I said, I did play around with the drag and drop, I did play around with opening multiple applications at the same time, and it works well, it's very fluid, and the Snapdragon processor in there is the latest and greatest and built for Galaxy, so it's going to be able to handle pretty much everything that you throw at it. But my question is, I wonder if it would replace an iPad for certain people, maybe it'll replace the iPad mini for certain people if Apple did that foldable, but that remains yet to be seen. I would just be curious to see how the use of a smartphone would change if I do have a larger inner display. So at the end of the day, from a hardware perspective, I was very blown away, very impressed with what Samsung had to offer. Again, I'm not exposed to folding phones every single day. I know that here in the US, they're pretty far and in between. I believe only Samsung has a true fold, and then there's also the Google Pixel Fold, which is still available here in the US, and then OnePlus has their Open, I believe it's called, which they don't make anymore. And then you have the flip form factor, which there are a couple other ones, but the competition in the fold market, which is a candy bar phone that opens up into a tablet, there's really only 3 that you can choose from, and really only 2 that are kind of brand new and still being used and iterated on. So there isn't much competition and much exposure to it, but I am impressed with the technology and the hardware that was brought forward, especially with how thin and lightweight, but also rigid and strong it felt, and it didn't feel like I was using a flimsy phone at the end of the day. Like when it opened, it felt like it was going to stay open and nothing was going to make that hinge, overbend, or it didn't feel like it was going to bend on its own. It didn't feel fragile at all, which is something that I was always worried about with the folding form factor. And then I see the appeal of having 2 displays. I see the appeal of having a larger inner display. I see the appeal of having that outer display being just as good as the inner display in order to be able to use it closed and not be distracted by having so much screen real estate. And there are situations on my iPhone where I'm copying things from app to app, and it's annoying to have to go back and forth when I'm doing addresses, or maybe I'm quoting something, or maybe I'm trying to find out what the price of a Pokemon card is, and now being able to have it side by side in one display on one phone could be beneficial depending on what your use cases are. But now the elephant in the room is this thing starts at $2,000. The $2,000 for a folding phone, you could argue that it is a regular smartphone and it's also a tablet all in one, but $2,000, that's, that gets you a MacBook Air and an iPhone. $2,000 gets you an iPad Air, an iPhone 16, and maybe a Mac Mini. So there's a lot of different ways you can cut up that $2,000 and spend it elsewhere, but at the end of the day, if you want a form factor in a phone that's going to be your productivity machine, it's going to be your end-all be-all, you can do more on the go with it, then you know who you are, and that $2,000 is just what the market is going to be for a folding phone of this caliber. They do have 3 different variants of a 256, 512, and then 1TB version, which of course the price increases after that, and they have this new mint color, which I thought was awesome, which is going to be a Samsung exclusive. Let's see if we can get our hands on that one, but let me know in the comment down below what you think. First off, have you ever tried an Android phone? I like to keep an open mind to see what the other side does, how it works, and one thing that I'm going to leave everybody with when it comes to, how the Android world lives. I was with a colleague of mine who was on the Android side, and it was cool to see the amount of variety that he's allowed to choose from when it comes to a smartphone. He had the brand new Nothing Phone 3, he had the Pixel Fold, he had another foldable device that's only sold in Asia, then he had another Android phone that I'd never seen before. So it's cool to see that there's different varieties, different form factors, and that comes with its own sacrifices like lack of ecosystem and maybe a little bit less consistency across operating systems and things like that, which Apple has been amazing at. But again, it would be good to see a little bit more variety on the Apple side when it comes to smartphones, what they look like, what they can do in terms of different form factors. But that's kind of what I want to leave everybody with. But let me know in the comment down below what you think. Have you tried an Android phone? Will you try an Android phone? What you think about the foldable form factor? And do you think Apple needs to get into this folding form factor game? Or do you think they're okay with their current iPhone lineup and then their current iPad lineup? But that'll do it. If you made it to the end, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know you made it to the end. And if you want to watch more videos like this one, definitely check out one of these videos right here. Until next time, I'm Fernando. Peace, everyone.